At the time, Napoleon left the island of Elba and returned to France. Marshal Ney had sworn to King Louis XVIII that he would capture Napoleon and bring him back in an iron cage. However, when Ney confronted Napoleon and saw the overwhelming support he received from the troops, he and his 6,000 men switched sides and joined the former emperor. As Napoleon marched toward Paris, he continuously gained the allegiance of French military units along the way. By March 19th, King Louis XVIII was forced to flee the Tuileries Palace and escape northward. Within just 3 weeks of returning from exile with only a small group of followers, Napoleon had restored his empire and regained power in Paris. Napoleon's return alarmed the European powers, who quickly formed the Seventh Coalition consisting of Britain, Austria, Russia, and Prussia with the goal of defeating him once and for all. The Allies mobilized over 700,000 troops, while Napoleon could muster only about 200,000 ready for battle. With no hope for a negotiation, he decided to strike preemptively, aiming to defeat each Allied force separately before they could unite. His first objective was to crush the Prussians in southern Wallonia before Allied reinforcements could arrive, forcing the British to withdraw and giving him a chance to negotiate from a stronger position with Austria and Russia. On June 15th, 1815, Napoleon crossed the Belgian border with his army, dividing his forces into 3 columns. Marshal Ney commanded the left wing, Marshal Grouchy the right, and Napoleon led the central reserve. The French swiftly broke through the Allied outposts and seized a key position between Wellington's British forces and Blücher's Prussian army, preventing them from joining up. On June 16th, 2 important battles occurred. At Ligny, Napoleon defeated Blücher, forcing the Prussians to retreat. And at Quatre-Bras, Ney's forces clashed with Wellington's army, but failed to deliver a decisive blow. Despite the victory at Ligny, Napoleon's plan to divide the Allies failed, as the Prussians did not retreat eastward, as expected, but instead moved north to stay in contact with the British. On June 17th, Napoleon set off in pursuit of Wellington toward Brussels. The following day, June 18th, the 2 forces faced each other near the village of Waterloo. Wellington chose a strong defensive position on a ridge south of the village, using the terrain for cover and organizing his infantry in square formations to repel French cavalry. Heavy rain the night before forced Napoleon to delay his attack until midday, as the muddy ground made it difficult for his artillery to maneuver. This delay gave the Prussians time to approach the battlefield. The battle was fierce. Napoleon began with an artillery barrage, followed by an infantry assault on Wellington Center. Though the British defenses held firm, they were gradually pushed back and had to launch cavalry counterattacks. British cavalry disrupted French artillery but suffered heavy losses. Napoleon responded with massive cavalry charges, yet the British squares held strong, repelling each assault. Meanwhile, the Prussians began to arrive on the battlefield from the east, engaging French forces that Grouchy had failed to intercept in time. Around 6 p.m., the French captured the strategic La Haye-Sainty farmhouse, allowing their artillery to advance and inflict heavy damage on Wellington Center. However, by about 7:30 p.m., the Prussians had fully engaged the French right flank. Napoleon was forced to commit his last reserves, the Imperial Guard, but even this elite force could not turn the tide. The British counterattacked with full force, supported by artillery, and broke the Imperial Guard. The French left, right, and center collapsed in succession. The army fled in chaos, with only a few units of the old guard maintaining order to protect Napoleon's retreat. The bloody Battle of Waterloo ended in a devastating defeat for Napoleon. The French suffered approximately 25,000 killed and wounded, 8,000 captured, and about 15,000 missing. The Allied forces also paid a heavy price. Wellington's army lost around 17,000 men, and the Prussians over 5,600. On June 22nd, Napoleon abdicated for the second time. He left Paris and attempted to sail to America, but the British Navy blockaded the ports. On July 15th, he surrendered. Unlike his first exile, the Allies this time chose to send him to St. Helena, a remote island in the South Atlantic Ocean, where he was closely guarded and lived in harsh, isolated conditions. Even in exile, Napoleon maintained his imperial dignity, insisting that his attendants address him with his proper title and carrying himself with solemn pride. He spent most of his time reading, writing, and reflecting on the past. His health gradually deteriorated, and in May 1821, he died at the age of 51. His final recorded words were, "France, Army, Josephine." Though he had wished to be buried on the banks of the Seine, his body remained on the island for many years before finally being returned to Paris. Napoleon's death marked the end of one of the most dramatic and controversial chapters in European history. End.